Okay, so the meeting is to read and approve minutes from last meeting. Anybody have any corrections from?
Well, maybe you give us a quick update on what happened at the last meeting, since we didn't have minutes from it.
Well, we didn't have a meeting, is my understanding. I don't know the Robert's rules on this.
Well, people
we had no
came here,
quorum. Scratched our head.
we talked a little bit, we didn't take any action. Todd, Libby and I went down to Saybrook September to look at different systems. It's interesting because Saybrook is one of the towns on the Connecticut coast where the Connecticut River meets Long Island Sound, and what drew me there was that they did not have big centralized plants. They had a lot of decentralized systems. If you're a business there or you're a homeowners association, you have to put in your own system. This town supervises a town of 10,000 people, all with a bunch of various ways of handling effluent. So we went on a great tour. Wasn't quite sure what we were going to find, but we found some very, they don't have a lot of people touring their septics down there as much as other features. But we had a very good tour of practically how these systems work, whether it's a 100-unit condominium complex or a shopping center. They all have their treatment systems similar to what you'll see in this film, except a lot of them go underground, some of them go above ground, and what they recommended to us was to have systems that go into a water source, because the water's so clear when it comes out is better than having the expense of putting things underground, especially in congested areas where they have private wells, because the more stuff you put underground, the more chance you have to continue to contaminate people's wells. So that was interesting, and the Cadillac system was called the Xenon system. They had the Cadillac, the Volkswagen, and a few jalopies.
I feel like one of those places we saw was
Was this guy,
box,
this thing?
yeah.
So there's all sorts of different
It had a whole condominium complex.
systems, different titles, names, manufacturers. The one that Steve initially proposed here was the Xenon system, which brings it up to the absolute highest level of water treatment, beyond a level that's required by DEP, I believe. And he came up, the source of this email was Steve came up with this system after reviewing the literature, and suggested there's another alternative as far as something that's smaller, less of a footprint. He can't make it tonight, had surgery, still very much involved with the project, just can't drive for a couple days, didn't want to take a taxi. So he's plugged in, and if we do take any other field trips, one of the things we talked about last non-meeting was just going around and making sure what this committee is proposing makes sense for a community of this scale, and that we're getting the best deal for the town and the community. So
Did Steve take you to Saybrook?
no, he did not go with us, because we just went sort of on our own looking at different systems, because we also wanted to be candid, and as we have, that we are sort of checking to make sure what he's proposing makes the most sense. And so that's sort of where the video came from, while we're on a roll and while I'm babbling along. The other thing that's come up since we last met was I had a visit from the USDA, and those are the people that are generally finance community rural systems. They have the biggest grant allocations for small communities like ours. Canada's refinanced their system, and Norfolk just redid their system, so the USDA people come through, look at how all these construction projects are going every month, make sure everything's going well. Because Steve's not here, I did ask them. I said one of the things we're looking at is alternatives, systems, right scale, and they said that Steve McDonald was very well versed. They thought well of him and felt he was a good person to weigh alternatives. The other thing that came out of that meeting too was Norfolk just got a grant for 46% of their project. So originally we talked about a 25% grant, and apparently Steve feels it's now likely that a project like this could be eligible for somewhere into the 40s. So that's significant news, because I think the 3 or 4 things we're looking at is alternatives, financing, different technologies, possible alternative site, and actually who's going to use the system, what's the scope of the system. So there is movement on all those fronts. And again, Steve said if we go to Hillsdale or look at another, probably more rural community than Old Saybrook, more comparable to here, he'd be glad to come with us to look at the New York State alternative thing. But again, the take home from Saybrook was that there's a bunch of different systems out there, depending on the size of the flow you're talking about, and the treatment level you seek to go up to, the general consensus from the people that toured us, and this guy who toured us, Steve, another Steve, had worked in New Haven where they process hundreds of thousands of gallons of septic a day. He said if you have a water body, it's much more cost effective to discharge into a water body than it is to put the effluent underground. That's what he had to say. So, and he'd be glad to have people come down and have another tour at some point. So that's my
So before we move into that area, let's just deal with the minutes.
Right.
Approving minutes
Sorry.
from the last meeting. Does anybody have any corrections? That was the meeting with Ann Stroud and Tony
Yeah.
Mary Health, right?
Yeah.
A long time ago. But we got a lot of confidence. I think the most important thing that came out of that meeting was they said this is our decision to make. And they can do recommendations and they feel like our engineer had done his due diligence. So it's good to see such a great turnout because clearly it represents different sides of the argument or the issue, and that ultimately will get us where we're trying to go. Not having the minutes in front of me, I can't say that I moved to approve the minutes. Anybody have any?
I wasn't here.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So, did somebody make a motion? I'm
Yeah,
not allowed to make a
I
motion.
make a motion to approve.
Okay, we approve the minutes. Ian
I'll second
approves,
it.
second.
I'll second it.
Richard, second. Okay. Minutes are approved. So let's move on. I don't know if we have any visitors except for all of you, many of whom are Cornwall residents. I don't have any communications to read. So we'll just move right on and discuss the future role and goals of the Water Septic Committee. I keep sort of bringing this up because our mandate originally as a study group was to examine the current limitations of the water septic systems in the village of West Cornwall. Also to advise the Board of Selectmen and the town on practical improvement alternatives and the procedures to implement these possible alternatives. So we've really completed that. I've said that for quite some time now. Are we going to, carry on? Perhaps, perhaps not. I think the issue of alternatives surely falls under this scope, and Steve's original alternative is one that's created quite a bit of public outcry about its location to begin with. So, and its visibility, what it actually is going to look like. So we've been endeavoring to find alternatives that are perhaps more amenable to the residents here in West Cornwall. And to that end, we took the trip to Saybrook because it's a community that's been struggling with the same issue. Saybrook is, I don't know how to describe it, it's quite different than us, obviously. Many of you know it. Very suburban, very dense. There's a lot of development, there's a lot of commercial development. I think the way they've addressed it is that each project comes in with its own septic solutions. And the town just kind of oversees, make sure that those projects are towing the state line, but that they don't really take control of it. In this case, the town would take control of this installation. So we have to look further afield for a comparable solution. And that's why the option of going to visit Hillsdale has come up, because in our QBS, which was a quality-based selection, when we chose whatever they are, WMC Consulting, one of the organizations that came in was a company called Ryan Biggs Clark Davis. And in their pitch, they proposed a plant that they had installed in the town of Hillsdale. So I don't know how many of you know Hillsdale, but it's a rural town, much like ours, just across the New York border. And I can pass around a picture that they sent to us as to what that plant might look like. And you want to see it, feel free to look and browse. So that's where we're at the moment in terms of continuing to advise the town. And I guess this meeting specifically is to see who and when we might be able to make a trip over there and pick their brains as to how that's been working. I think you've actually visited, haven't you, Lily?
No, only talked to them.
Well, let's hear some of that.
Well,
What
one of the
they've said.
things I heard a lot of people say is they think that if there is anything near their homes, that their property values will decrease. So I have been calling assessors in these towns to find out if that has ever occurred. And I haven't yet found a town where that's occurred. Basically what I heard from the assessors is if there is a treatment plant or a community septic near their house, basically it's like when somebody goes to buy a house, if the septic is up and running or not. So so if you go into a house and their septic has failed, that house value is going to be lower. If you go into a house and they have a good septic, the house value, nobody really thinks about it. Nobody talks about it. It's a good septic. It doesn't really come up. It only really comes up in assessors when something has failed. That's when that problem comes up. So Hillsdale did not see any decrease of house values by their assessor when they did solve this problem. They didn't see that happen. Old Saybrook did not see any decrease in house values. I talked to their assessor when they solved the problem of what they had to solve, which was that they had,
You got some feedback as to how and why they actually undertook.
They were under order. Hillsdale was under order. Their mayor, it got to the point where people, there was a story, one person told me in Hillsdale, that it was so bad in Hillsdale, and it got to that point where they would tell the children, don't go get the fly ball in left field because there's black water over there. So the kids were learning at the baseball field not to run to a certain place in the field. So that's the point. So the mayor, the residents still wouldn't do anything. So the mayor called for the town to be put under order, which was very radical, from what I understand. That's not something that usually happens.
He's
But
probably no longer the mayor.
probably not. But they do have their septic problem solved. They do
Well,
have it solved.
Is it solved?
No, it's solved
What
with that
are the-
picture.
But what are is there anecdotal feedback as to this was a great thing, this was a waste of money, do we have
The
any?
appraisers say that it did not.
Well, besides property values, in terms of
Well, they don't have black
So-called
water in the
development.
baseball field.
economic development of any kind,
They-
or
well, they-
residential?
That is what the residents, when you walk around, I didn't go and see
Uh-huh.
that thing that you're looking at, the picture. I just talked to people in town.
Right,
What do
what
you
was-
think?
what did they say?
They do have businesses in town now.
Right,
they
but did
did-
they say that's a result of having made that investment, or did they?
That is what people think is the result. Who knows
Who
if it's the
knows, yeah.
result? There is now a town
And-
development.
So you actually saw this?
I
this
did not see
installation?
that
You didn't see
facility.
it,
I
okay.
didn't go to the facility. I couldn't find it. I thought I could find it.
Oh, I see.
If I
So
could.
is this a phone call, Gordon, you could make to their
I guess
once
so,
in
yeah.
future first
Yeah.
selectmen, or whatever they have on their
Yeah.
mayors, I guess?
Supervisor.
Can I go back to
Yeah.
where you started the meeting and
Okay.
questioning our mandate? Because our first selectman is here. And you know, where are we going with this? I know that there's a lot of options that are available.
Right.
And the technology is, you know, we can discover as much about that.
Right.
Largely, we're relying on Steve to direct us to where, you know, the proper technology.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to iron out, you know, a location for this. And then I don't know what other particulars we have to figure out, or might figure out, or what our mandate is. Like you, as you said, we were commissioned to find out whether there was a need for this and what the answer might be. Are we,
Did
should
we
we,
even decide
should we
that?
look for an interpretation of what our mandate is to going forward
Yes.
at this point?
Well, I think there's still more work that could be done. I think this is more than when we first started. I think this is currently more expensive than perhaps we thought it was going to be. And I think if the town's going to backstop it and make a lot of, you know, a major investment in it, then we want to make sure we have the best system proposed. I don't see there, I think Steve's done a good job to date, laying out some alternatives, but as I said, I think there's probably 4 areas that could be researched more with obvious questions over the fall and winter, and then we'll know more in the spring.
Can you enumerate those 4?
Yeah, I would say that there's 4 areas that should be looked at, 4 or 5. One's the site. I mean, the site we had originally was problematic. The last meeting, I think Libby, you know, offered her
Oh, yeah.
land over there, so that to me is a bit of that's news. Because again, that's probably doesn't have the flooding issues of the site down there, or at least a better elevation. So there's, you know, a site that may have, a site that may need to have a little more research and work on it, but it seems like that's somewhat of an improvement. Second thing is financing. What is the real rate? I mean, the difference between 46% and 25% is real. What is the final cost going to be if there's these new Canadian technologies? Maybe they're a $2 million plan instead of a $3 million plan.
I called the engineer, it's 340, that picture they saw, the thing you just saw, cost $340,000 to $350,000. And in our original numbers, the treatment facility was $1 million.
Right, there's no tariff on it.
And they're, well, not
Hopefully
yet.
not. So, again, there might be yeah, so again, if I could see personally putting that, I mean, there seemed to be that scale similarity between the guy and his,
The prefab unit.
the prefab guy and
Because
the
they
aerial
make it,
seemed,
yeah,
you could,
somewhere else and they bring it.
seemed like the same sort of scale. I could see, you know, that.
What we're
that-
talking about is something, instead of having to build something on site, something that you'll see in the video when you see it tonight, if you follow up on this, is that they prefab something and all you do is prepare a slab and they come and they drop it on the slab. I'm assuming we could decorate it on the exterior the way we
You
want
can make
it.
it anything you want. That's what they said. You can put it in the side of a.
So it's, you know, generally, you know, houses when they're made that way are a lot more cost effective. So we probably can hope to see a reduction in the cost.
Right, so you've got the site, the cost. Also, I think it's important to say this is the scope, this is the area that's going to be covered, because it's certainly pushed back from the side streets as opposed to the main street. And again, have people sign up, say, yeah, if you do this, we're willing to pay for the, you know, hookup costs and the annual cost. And again, to make sure that we look at some alternative technologies and alternative communities, not going on a huge trip, but, you know, to see, we talked to New York, we've already talked to Saybrook, we can learn things to make sure we're going in the right general direction, because I think if this goes to the town, there's going to be a lot of questions, and I feel more confident even just having done a little more homework than that. And again, I think Steve's willing to work some more, so I see another, you know, fall, winter, working on those points, and if there's any other ones, but I think those are the main ones, and then being set. Then the town's going to have to look at the financial things and how does that work with the towns. We're already borrowing some money. How does that all work with the Board of Finance?
Well, that's not in our...
That's not in your thing, but again, that's something that could happen.
I mean, we should put together a package and say we want
Right.
this hardware and this site and this is why.
Right.
Well, we
As I
could
said,
recommend one or
That's
the other,
three
but
things.
we,
What's the fourth thing?
I think sort of alternatives, did I say that? So you have the cost, the site,
The site financing.
and in the scope, you know, what area of West Cornwall are we talking about? And then, you know, the alternatives, looking at are we in line with how other communities deal with this problem that everybody has?
yeah,
what I-
particularly other communities that are similar.
Similar, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's real important.
Todd, what I don't understand, you brought up the QBS process, and a lot of us were really interested in the Ryan Biggs proposal at the
Right.
time, and it was blown
Right.
off. We just didn't vote for it because it was said that DEEP would never approve a
Well, I
system
don't know
like
if anybody said
Hillsdale.
never approve. I think the
Well, we-
prevailing feeling was that it would be best to go with a firm who had understood the Connecticut regulations. We were impressed by Ryan Biggs. They're very forward-thinking, forward-looking, and it's interesting that we're circling back to them specifically because of the pastoral rural setting.
That system is totally underground, and we don't have that, we don't have
Well,
that underground, do we?
No,
Well, we
but
don't know.
also in New York and Massachusetts, it's less ground that you need.
That you need.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the difference, if you guys don't know, but that
We don't,
Connecticut has
we can't look
different,
back to that at this point because we don't have the square
the
footage to do
ground,
this.
the ground.
Well, except now with the pig, perhaps. There's,
I'm sorry, with the one.
With the waffle.
with Libby's
If
property,
you use
there's-
the property there, I don't
it
know.
doesn't, it's not
But
under
still, that property
brownfield
is not
order.
really big enough.
Who knows? And there's, we
depends on
talked
what
about
type of
perhaps the town
system.
roads. And Ryan Biggs was very creative. They put systems under parking lots.
Yeah, we were in a parking lot and the system was under us, right? And we were standing on
Well,
it.
I have
You
a
weren't
system
there.
under my parking lot.
Yeah, you do. It's unfortunately not yours, yeah.
You too.
But, right, yeah.
But what I still don't understand, I remember being at those meetings and being told that DEP would never approve this, that it wasn't something that was, acceptable in Connecticut, and that it was unlikely that DEP would change their minds because they didn't have the staffing to do the research, to see if it would work. I
Right.
mean, we were really, headed off that whole thing.
Well, we're circling back.
So
I think we should make a
have
visit.
you gotten any information? Have you contacted DEEP to see if there is any change in their attitude?
Well, I don't recall hearing from DEP about this. I
Well, I think
recall
the thing is,
we
when we
all-
talk to Hillsdale, we'll see what acronym they have for their system. Because most engineers know about these systems even if they don't work in the state. So we can find out, and then Steve can talk to
Yeah, the whole
Stroud or
Steve-
whatever, and say, what's your reaction to this type of system?
Right.
Is it in the ballpark? Because the other thing we found down in Saybrook was there was some experience that not all the alternative systems work well. The innovative alternative systems didn't seem to work as well as these xenon type treatment systems seemed to be the general consensus. So they had tried some things that worked better than others. So we'll see. And also, it was a more built-up area. I mean, in a way, it was congested, and West Cornwall is congested. Hillsdale has a lot of
Open space.
open space around
Yeah,
it.
yes.
That's a very good point, Lou. To bring up, we looked at this picture, that looks really nice. It's in this field. Where's the nearest house
Yeah.
to me?
Yeah.
I want to know. I don't want to see it. Be able to, it might be a beautiful building, but it's so crowded down here. This is the center of town. And we don't see another house in those pictures, and that's very important because the site is so important because it's going to stir up trouble.
If everybody who lives in town doesn't want a system, even if it's in a house that just looks like a house, then you can't solve the problem. And then we should disband. That was our point. That's our point. Our point is if we can make it look, if it looks like that red barn right there, and inside that red barn, I know, that's where we deal with everybody's effluent, and it's inside that red barn. If that's something that the townspeople don't want, then then we're done, right?
I have a question for you. I was at the GW in Washington Depot. I don't know if anybody knows anything.
I love it. Yeah.
I went down to the lower, where the lawn is, and it's like a place where people picnic down below, and then walked through the hedge, and there's a parking lot with this building
Yeah.
that looked like a barn
Yeah.
with a shed next to it, and the smell. I said, "What's this?" You know, and I was with my daughter. She said, "Maybe that's one of those."
Well,
you know,
maybe.
we
I
couldn't
don't
tell,
know. I don't
and
know.
it was like a building probably from this couch to the wall square, and it had a little window in the back open, and you could see underneath there were stones.
Right.
It just looked like one of those pre-made ones that you get from Lowe's, but a little bit bigger.
Yeah.
But there was a smell.
What was that, a system?
I don't
We
know.
don't know.
That's why I'm
Right.
asking.
Yeah,
I
we
went
don't know.
online.
I mean, it could have been a regular underground system that was
That they
overflowing.
put
I
something.
mean, I had Mary's system overflowing in my parking lot,
No, I'm just.
and that was an
curious
underground
because
system, so
I went online
we
and
have to
said
look at the
something
things.
about
You look at the
something
video that you'll see
system.
tonight on that, and they put this thing right in the middle of a trailer park.
Yeah.
I mean, immediately next to all, and it looks like maybe another
That's what
trailer.
I'm a little bit, because it's all new to
New
us.
technology.
Technology.
You
I
know where
mean,
you can go? Do you know Salisbury School?
Yeah. I
You know that
Salisbury
barn?
School.
That's their system.
Yeah,
You can drive right up to it.
yeah.
You
I
can
know.
call them and ask them to go see it.
We just have to see how many people are gonna be using it, how much it can handle.
If they do it, they
I
do
just
it by
wish
flow
I agree
rates.
with Don with the thing in the middle of, I know you're saying that, but it's still in the middle of town.
But then, if that's gonna be the way, then we should stop. And we really should stop. I'm not kidding. I'm not being crazy, right? I'm just really, I mean, we could go on forever looking and trying to find an answer. And if people really, if it looking like that red barn is more than people can handle,
It's not just the appearance, it's the location, and it's the psychology of it. You know,
So-
and to your discussion about the assessed value of the property,
Mhm.
I think we're all aware that that number in the tax assessor's office is very different than what's in Priscilla's real estate office, you know, and the marketability, I think, of a property, of properties being located close to a facility would be affected.
Well, the other
except
thing
that
we
they
saw-
weren't in the place I called. That's all I know.
I know, I'm just
The
saying, there's
assessor
a
I talked
difference
to
between assessors
didn't have-
and.
And sales. They did not have a decrease
I
in
don't-
sales in this particular town that I spoke to. That's all
I
I'm
just don't
saying.
know how it would, you know, I'm just saying, if you took house A and house B,
Mhm.
and exactly the same, and I know that's not gonna happen anywhere, but one of them is in close proximity to a septic treatment facility, and the other one is removed from it, there's gonna be an effect on those prices.
For you, I guess it would. For me, it wouldn't. But that's okay. That's opinion. That's fine. Yeah.
James,
I'll guarantee you one thing that's gonna affect the value of your home is if your septic fails and you can't replace it.
Yes.
Then I guarantee you the value of your home is gonna go down to the price of to burn the wood. Without a septic, at some point, all systems fail. Guarantee you, every single person here that has a septic system, your septic system will fail. It may or may not be in your lifetime. When that happens, you will either set up your family, your future for success by planning for the future, or you will not.
I took care of mine.
Right, that's great. So there you go. So, I mean, that could be a vote we have as a town. Do we just want to say the heck with it and everybody's on their own, build your own, and then these folks can stop doing this? I think that's the point. I don't know if that vote should be made in this
No.
meeting or if
Would
that's
have
a
to be a
town
town
meeting.
meeting, right.
But, you know, or maybe the town, you should vote on that. You know. But I
Like
guarantee you, if
this
your septic
building, for
system fails, your home value is
Just so people know,
Gone,
like this
correct.
building here has no option. Zero option.
But it never
For
happened.
instance, there are so many buildings coming onto the market. I mean, Barbara Farnsworth's bookshop, there is nothing.
No option.
That-
Right.
No option.
Right.
The people will be stranded with a building trying, I mean, we'll have, at some point, we'll have something that will collapse into the road because it's unsellable. Ian Ingersoll's building has no septic. It's going to be unsellable at some point. Who wants to purchase a property that they don't have a bathroom in? There's already a problem with Carl and Jackie's building because the state owns so much into the building that it is very difficult to sell. So we are looking at a town that is going to dissipate. We don't have we have different town centers. We have 2 commercial centers. We don't have a place for employment any longer. I mean, this used to employ a lot more people than it does now. This has shriveled up to next to nothing. And you are then looking at a situation where you will have to think, how are we going to attract young people that will facilitate our volunteer fire department? Then we will look to the future, to a fire department that we possibly will have to pay for. Because I don't want to be, carried out of the house at some point by someone who's, 75, 80. I mean, really, that's a huge problem in this area. It's, there are so few young people.
Getting phantasmagoric.
Well,
I don't believe it. Has any location, is there any location that everyone can agree on? Does it have to
Well,
be
let's
like?
get specific.
by
Does anybody
everybody?
have any objections
Is
to?
there-
To that
to
red
that
bar
barn?
right there.
I kind of do.
Is there like down?
I don't know, because I want to know what, I can't say definitely no, but, if you could put it in the barn, but I
Well,
can't say yes either.
That's a quantum step forward.
Sorry, yeah.
So let's take a harder, closer look at all of this.
Well, if it was there, would you prefer to look like that barn or like this library?
Right, like this library, which
Yeah.
can't do anything, well, this library.
I mean, if it was sheathed like this library, it would be a more attractive building.
Yeah.
What about
I
buying
like
an
this
existing
barn.
one of these buildings and using that? I mean, is that an option?
Sure.
I know a building.
Well, Ian often.
I know a building.
Right. I wouldn't mind if the barn looked better, but I've gotten used to Phil and his stuff out there and all that, and I'm not, we're just all used to it. But that's not necessarily a good
I
reason
don't
either.
think Phil should.
Right,
be
right.
Right, well, it's not gonna be there forever, I hate to ruin it.
No, we can't be living there forever, no, it won't be, no.
So it's not the question is what problems.
No, no, I-
The
Richard, go
question
ahead.
being asked
Say again?
The question being asked, yes.
is whether the committee should continue to
Correct.
do what it's been doing, which is look at the possible alternatives in designs, locations, what are the aforementioned, the financing, the site, the scope, I can't remember what.
Alternatives.
Keep on going. Why is that a problem? I mean, you've determined some things that are not going to work, either through cost, scope.
Well, I'll tell you, I'm going to
location.
answer you directly. It's a problem to continue doing it in this setting where we have a very circumspect group of Cornwallians. This should become a much more town-wide discussion. So if we're going to continue along this path, we should find a way to make it more inclusive of the whole town, and that's why I felt it should become a selectmen's conversation. And you guys and gals, Priscilla is, should find a way to get some of these contentious issues put in front of the whole town.
Yeah.
Because here, we're kind of overwhelmed by the people who live down this street, and that's always going to be a lose-lose situation. for
Not
us.
necessarily.
But I don't
I
mind, I'm glad you guys come.
If we can get a
But it's
consensus
just
on
reality.
that one of the buildings acceptable and in some form, that's a positive step forward.
But
But no, I don't think it was acceptable, right? We didn't.
Well, nobody said no, he said he'd like to hear more
Yes
about
or
it.
no,
No,
How
I
can
know,
we
I'm
make
not
it
making,
acceptable?
I'm not saying, I'm just,
How can we make it acceptable?
I'd have to see it more, I'd have to see something.
Well, the first thing we'd have to, I'll drive you up
It
to
sounds like me,
Salisbury
me.
and let you
Yeah.
stand next to a building
Yeah.
to experience the lack of sound and the lack of smell associated. And this is a system that was built 10 years ago.
Right.
The technology is far
it's
advanced
amazing
now.
technology.
And when you
That's
look at the video,
Tonight, you'll see that they've located this, pad ready, bring it in, drop it in place. It's working within a week. It doesn't have the shell that we want on it, but it's right in the middle of many homes, much closer than this, than it would be to you. So if we could satisfy those concerns and then have you, as a neighbor, have input into what it's going to look like. Would you prefer it to look like a barn, or would you prefer it to look like a white collaborative building that's in keeping with the period that this town is primarily consists of.
That would be consensus.
And that
for
would-
the town.
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Well, I mean, that's, we want to please the neighbors. We want to keep our neighbors happy. And, as far as property values will go down in a town that's dead, for one. Just to reassure you that if there were businesses on Main Street, your individual property values would maintain themselves, where they are currently, or hopefully get better from where they are currently.
James?
And if we could deal with specifics like that, then we might be able to take and maybe that's our role to take this thing forward. Because we have another iron in the fire. As the months have gone by in the summer, we've come up with this new technology, which is going to save, a bit of money on the whole expenditure. So sometime in the next 6 months, maybe we can figure out, which system is our absolute, choice to go forward. And if we have a location and we have a price on the system that it's going to cost, then we can let the selectmen deal with the financing and that part of it. But we will have done our job.
James has a comment.
I was just going to suggest, because there was concern if you've outlived your mandate, perhaps. The mandate was to determine a need, am I
Yes.
correct? So perhaps there is a town meeting where this group presents the findings of that mandate. The town can then vote on if we need a new committee to determine what now are we going to get, where are we going to put it, answer those questions, or vote no, thanks for the information, you guys worked hard, we're good. And vote no, and then stop wasting everybody's time. And then at that point, the committee is now mandated to move forward
Right.
or mandated to stop.
So I think we need
I
some
would- I
input.
would-
Is
I
that the
would-
way this
I would
works?
say
Stuff
that
works or
it's
no
not-
works? Go
It's
ahead.
not specifically a town vote on doing that. I think that is something that the selectmen decide
Right.
on giving the charge to a group to move on some project, and whether they come back with their findings or they don't come back with their findings. I mean, that's what the selectmen are asking them to do. The town vote would be involved in expending a large sum of money or financing it or borrowing a large sum of money. Or is the town going to be supportive of that? You got to be careful about putting the cart in front of the horse. I mean, until the committee has spent more time than they already have, even though that's hard to believe, to come up with the ultimate answer, the best project, the best alternative for the best price on the best site with the best technology that we can come up with that'll work for us, then your charge isn't done. And you continue to go. And that is the presentation that is made to townspeople, and hopefully all the concerns that every member here that has, and people that aren't here, that their concerns are incorporated into the answer. And really that is what should get voted on
Right.
by the town.
Well, as you can see,
With some
doing-
direction, I mean, with some guidance and direction from the selectmen or the Board of Finance or whoever else may have some input into it,
Yeah.
necessary input.
Yeah, well, I think that we're doing our due diligence to listen to those that show up to these meetings and your concerns.
And I think
take
it's
it.
important, I think the initial, we had a bunch of presentations brought forth to us by different engineers. One of them is the Hillsdale peoples. They were not chosen for a variety of reasons that were valid, and yet we're coming back around and looking at that project again. That's how hard that your committee, this committee is working at trying to come up with the right answer. I mean, just because you decided at the beginning that that's not the way we're going to go doesn't preclude you from coming back and going down that road.
Well, I understand, yeah.
And that's a good
Surely,
thing.
more information is better than less. And this has triggered Steve to work harder to address our issues here too. But sooner or later, a decision has to get made. I mean, we can't just drift off into the future until the technology catches up with our
I bet
interests.
you within the next 3 months we could nail this down pretty tight.
Yeah, well, we'll see.
Let's do it.
Joanne?
I think there is something we could absolutely do now and that we should do immediately, is that this committee should send a note to the Economic Development Committee for the POCOD, because I looked at their draft, and their original draft for economic development for the next 10 years in Cornwall had originally endorsed a septic system for West Cornwall with any tax burden to be spread across the town-wide. And then I saw a revision of their draft, and that sentence had been deliberately eliminated. And I think that's a big mistake. I think this committee should express.
Who's doing this?
Anna Tamel. No, Anna Tamel, it's the POCOD. This is the 10-year plan for where the town's going. And if we can't at least say there that we believe the system is crucial and that it should be a town-wide responsibility, not the 30 homeowners here, I couldn't understand why they took it out.
What was removed, just the entire septic?
No, the entire sentence that said it should be a town-wide financial responsibility.
So they're claiming that it should just be a West Cornwall financial
Well,
responsibility?
they're not claiming anything, they just eliminated the sentence and clarity that I think should be restored.
Well, can we ask you to write the letter to him and ask? Make that
No, you
request?
have to, Gordon's having a apoplexy over here over something.
Well, I don't think I don't think, I mean, again, if this committee does its work in 3 months, that committee is going to be going on to 2020. So we're talking about the town making a decision here, very short period of time. I don't think the sky is falling on town support of the project, but I don't think it's a fair characterization. I think people on that committee support the town-wide plan for this.
I'm not characterizing them, I'm characterizing what they wrote.
It's grammar more than it's an issue.
Grammar, well then I
Well, why don't we
would
ask
urge,
them
let's
to
put it back
clarify?
in.
Anyway.
What, should we
I
ask
think
them to clarify?
But it was
Oh, put it back in.
It was actually Anna Tamel who had stated that the whole town should get behind that project.
Correct.
I mean, the whole town is behind financing a school that serves very few. What is the difference between a school that serves a few kids? Some people choose to put their kids into private schools, and a valid system that rejuvenates a town center and opportunities for this area. Tourism, employment for young people. I mean, we want young people. We don't get them if we don't create employment opportunities. We don't have to lay everything out for them, but we have to create opportunities. We have old people that have needs. We need young people to facilitate those needs. And we can only get them here by being proactive and not always being so, I don't know.
There's got to be better jobs too. I mean, most of the young people I know are professionals, and they're not going to work in a coffee shop or. No, they're not. They're all spread out all over.
Well, but you have to, the point being, you have to have the basic infrastructure in a town to survive. If
I know.
you don't have the infrastructure, you can't survive as a town, and then people can make choices. Not everybody wants to live in a small parochial village. Not everybody wants to live in a big city, but you have the people that do want to live in a small town really do want to still live here. And because I employ quite a few of these young people, because there aren't a lot of them, so. And the ones that want to be here, they really do want to be here. They're just, they can't. So they have to go to Danbury or they have to go to Watertown because that's where the work is.
That's where the
We're not
You know,
alone.
no, not a lot of them do, but some do, you know. But, and they would if they could, but they can't, so they don't.
And we're not alone in this. I mean, look around, look at Keenan, look at Torrington, look at Winston.
Yeah.
You know,
Right.
it's
They
not
didn't go out
just
of
West
business.
Cornwall.
Because of the septic. They went out of business. Amazon and all these other companies have taken over. You have to be open-minded about that and realize that too. Because this
true.
town used to be really booming. I know that. It was wonderful at one time.
But we still have something
It
here.
wasn't because of the sewage
But
though.
we still have something here that you can't buy from Amazon. You can't walk across the bridge on Amazon. You can't walk up the
But
street
I
on
don't know if you,
Amazon.
I don't know.
You
if
You know.
can do
You
that.
couldn't have a restaurant at that
Right.
building again because of the
We're
septic.
not knocking the
You know,
business.
people
That's
still
not-
want places to
just-
go and visit.
No, I'm just saying.
I use Amazon more than anything.
I'm not, I mean, I'm all for it. I love the way it used to be here. I mean, like the
Yeah.
town,
Okay,
really, but
let's
that was.
get a,
You know, I'd just like to back up Rich. I think at this juncture, there's just still too much ambiguity for people to make an informed decision. I think that we need more, what is the technology? What are acceptable sites? We need to concretize, a model. Instead of spinning our wheels all the time. We could do this, we could do that, maybe. Because right now, there's no there. I don't know what I would vote on, because there's no there.
Our charge should be to finish this up.
It's too ambiguous.
we're gonna go make a trip to Hillsdale.
Is there
that's
a town, excuse me, I'm part
Yeah.
of this unconscionable intrusion.
No.
Is there a town like in Vermont or in Massachusetts that has a similar problem in a similar village? Because there's a lot of them in Vermont, and they're really ecologically conscious.
Well, that's why the trip to Hillsdale, they're pretty close, we can do that on a whim, and we can get a look at a small room.
Because it'd be interesting to get
It's not
something,
identical.
be almost like a sister city situation, have one of their representatives come down here and say, we have the same stuff, nobody wanted, blah, 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 we've done it,
Yeah.
it's phenomenal,
That's-
there's more brook trout now, or
Right.
something. But-
Yeah. So that's why we're gonna try to make a trip to Hillsdale.
Or, it's something, whatever.
So should we try to plan a date? Does anybody have a? Steve gave me some dates that he thought he could do. It would be good to have him, obviously, because he's very, very much an expert. Very familiar with what we're after. Let's see.
Do we know that the water is like, won't affect the wells in the area? And what kind of chemicals are used to process the septic?
It's a biofilter. You're filtering out solids. You're not treating it with chemicals.
So there's no chemicals involved?
They
And
use
the wells
UV.
would not-
Look at the videos. I mean, it's amazing
We'll put it on the
technology.
site so you can see it.
And I think also, one thing, Cindy too, when we went down to the Saybrook, they had this equipment right as part of the condominium complexes, so they were probably 50, 75 feet away from people who were living. There was no smell there, you could smell the train when it went by. And same thing, it was right in the shopping center, just as another building. So it wasn't like what you saw down in Washington. So this is new technology that seems to be self-contained, and you can see where it's coming in, when it's getting agitated, when it's being treated and pushed through all these filters and membranes, and when it's coming out, it's clear. Now, and that water has to be, and it's all computerized, so that water and all those levels and all the things have to be continuously recorded as far as what is coming out of that stuff. And their water, they said that was coming out of there was several factors higher in clarity than it needed to be. So again, that was an important thing to learn, that it was an integral thing to whether it was their main street, whether it was their condominium complexes where they lived, or whether it was their shopping center. It was just another building as far as the smell and the impact on the neighbors. There were 170 units there. They seemed to be all full. There were young people there. They were buying and selling them. Obviously, with this unit as part of the whole deal, in fact, it was better than the old places that had cesspools and leaching fields that were leaking. So it seemed like it was full, and it seemed like it was integrated well into their lifestyles.
And there were wells there, not just,
I'm not sure if they had public water or whether they had individual wells, but the other thing
It was
too.
different in different places. Down by that
Right.
water that was wells, but over
Right,
in
they
that
had
condo
attached
was
work
not.
stuff.
was not.
And the other good thing about the system we're looking at is the modularity of it. You can start small, the one unit that Libby showed you, that does 22,000 gallons a day, but you can add units. And, that gives us more gives the town more flexibility as it grows, or as more people?
Well, provided it's put in a place where you can add to it. You go up further, I suppose. Well, what was Steve's recommendation in his study for us per day?
29,750.
So it's one unit is very close to that.
Yeah, yeah.
And we've
That's why-
actually pared
But
back
then, and
on
then we pared it back from that
Yeah,
number
yeah.
because that
So-
was including,
So one might just,
railroad,
and Steve designed it, he said, well into the future.
Yeah,
He
yeah.
thought this-
the
For the
29.
whole 60 houses. correct?
Yeah,
So one unit would probably do
Right.
West Cornwall forever.
right, well, yeah,
And you could put it even behind your red barn.
yeah.
What's the size of that structure? It isn't-
16 feet by 40 feet.
Right.
See, that's 6,400 square feet. That's 3 times the size of my house, which is 10 rooms.
No, okay, then I must have the
16
wrong.
by
You got
That's
something
what I-
wrong.
That's
I
600
must-
No,
square
it's
feet.
not 600.
Yeah,
16 by 40 feet or by 14 feet?
40.
40.
I think it's
That's
40.
It's 600 feet.
400, that's
Not-
600.
Oh, it
Yeah.
is? All right, that's better.
Yeah,
Okay, sorry.
that's
It
okay.
was-
Want it right
Yeah.
on
The
the,
cubic feet is
It
another.
was about the size of this room.
right on the.
It's about the size of a
Okay.
tractor trailer,
All right, I was
right?
thinking
But you can
bigger.
see it
Yeah, But
online.
you should go, should
Yeah.
go.
I will get the video on the Cornwall website as soon as I leave here.
Oh, good idea.
Yeah.
Great idea.
That's a good idea.
Might
Excellent.
be a good idea to have some artist rendering.
Yeah,
or something.
640, all right.
Hey, this is what it would
You're
actually
gonna
look
see
like.
a really neat,
Yeah.
watch the video, then decide
Yeah.
what you need beyond that.
Yeah, watch the video, picture that red barn, and picture that structure in the barn.
Yeah.
I don't know, I have no idea if that's, but
I don't know about anybody else, I'm comfortable letting the neighbors say whether they want it to look
exactly,
like a barn or collaborative.
whatever they want, but
Yeah, that in the final vote, that's.
Yeah.
So
that's what we should
let's,
nail down.
let's get a date here, guys. Tuesday, Steve says Tuesday, he's pretty much available anytime. Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Fridays are best. But he can work around pretty much anything.
He's not gonna want that.
Okay.
So, can we get a date? Let's get a date before it gets snowy and, right. Sometime,
Tuesday, Wednesday, maybe.
Tuesday, Wednesday, okay, so
2 weeks.
Tuesday, Wednesday, and let's see, how about,
And gotta see about the Hillsdale people too.
right, so maybe you could
I'll
make
follow
a
up.
reach
I'll
out?
also talk to this distributor up in Ontario
yeah,
because I have a feeling, looking at their site, they have a US office.
they do, I
So-
talked to the guy
So
today.
Wayne's Point, they may have a place in Vermont or Massachusetts.
No, they have a salesperson for
But
here,
is
I
there
talked
Right,
to,
so I mean, the question is where
Oh,
your
an installation.
your install.
I would bet you that one at that condominium, because that's what it
well, it
was.
sure did look like it. It sure looked like
It
it,
looked like that.
yeah,
He
Anyway,
gave me the name of that.
yeah. But,
Making progress already.
11/13.
yeah.
So, we need you to tell
Call
us.
Hillsdale.
Yeah, let's get a meeting.
right.
A Tuesday or Wednesday.
Wednesday, within the next 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah, great.
The
Okay,
next meeting's the 13th.
so is there anything else anybody wants to hash out?
How about a letter to the-
Question?
Sorry?
Sure.
Yes.
Yeah, please.
My first question is, where can we find copies of the meeting minutes to read?
Online.
They're all on the website.
On Cornwall Town website?
Yeah, Cornwall CT Dollar should be,
Yeah.
yeah.
Should be.
Joanne says it is, it is.
And
Yeah.
then the last question is, ultimately, after you've made your decisions of your scope, your cost, your alternatives, and you present it to the town, what happens then? It goes to vote?
Yeah, the town will have to have a town-wide vote. So it won't be 5 o'clock in the afternoon, there will be a town meeting or a referendum even that will decide all this with a lot of publicity, with a lot of meetings even before that happens to explain all these, how the committee got to where it did and with the engineers. There'll be probably some informational meetings at the school or whatever at night to explain what's being proposed and why we got to where we are. So there'll be a lot more concrete stuff than we have.
If it takes 2 or 3 years to get to the final presentation, because it's already been a year and a half, hasn't it?
Oh, yeah.
5 years, whatever.
You said
If
this
it takes
is
2 or 3 years to get,
2006.
Todd was a young tennis pro.
to answer your question, it takes 2 or 3 years to get to this, to the final presentation. It should take several, 2 or 3 or 5 meetings presenting it to townspeople so that they can digest everything that's being presented before so they can make an intelligent decision.
I would like to ask,
Yeah.
that at very minimum, if you don't want to specifically request a town-wide expenditure across the entire town, that the committee at least write to the Economic Development POCOT Subcommittee and stress the importance of putting in a septic system that is
Well, why don't we
receives
invite
townwide support.
one of them to the next meeting, so we can hear from them what their
What they were right.
position is.
I think they're very sympathetic in this project. This project will not move forward without town support. It's inherent in the project.
And Don is asking, when is our next
Oh,
meeting?
yeah.
We do second Tuesday of every
Oh,
month,
so-
so I think it's a November, it says here, November 13th,
Okay, thanks.
Tuesday, November, but I get those dates wrong, so double check.
Second Tuesday.
Second Tuesday at 5 o'clock here.
And that's it, right?
Okay, meeting, anybody motion?
Move to adjourn.
All those in favor? Opposed?
Aye.
Yay!
Okay, that's it.
After dinner.
West Cornwall Septic Committee meeting. Yes. That's it.